The vast, shimmering expanse of the South China Sea has long been a theater of simmering tensions, a chessboard where nations maneuver for strategic advantage. Yet on August 11, 2025, this simmering pot boiled over, in a most unexpected and humiliating fashion for Beijing. Near the contested Scarborough Shoal, a Chinese Coast Guard ship, in hot pursuit of a much smaller Philippine fisheries boat, met a clumsy and disastrous fate. It collided with a vessel from its own navy. The incident, captured on video by the quick-thinking Philippine crew, the footage spread like wildfire. Exposed the chaotic reality behind China's curated image of naval invincibility. The heavily damaged Coast Guard ship, hull breached and pride wounded, limped back to Hainan for repairs. That it made port was a small victory for Beijing, but the larger narrative was set. This public humiliation triggered a predictable and dangerous response. Analysts, Beijing overcompensated, projecting greater strength. In direct response, the Philippines joined forces with allied partners for high-profile joint military exercises, the United States, Australia, Canada. This show of force was the capstone of Exercise Alon 2025, the largest ever military exercise staged by Australia with the Philippines, involving more than 3,600 military personnel. Manila framed the maneuvers as a testament to its commitment to defense cooperation, signaling a strategic choice to rely on a coalition of partners. Their presence acts as a powerful deterrent, raising the potential costs for further Chinese aggression. These exercises enhance interoperability, enabling allied forces to operate seamlessly in a crisis. For China, multiple Western navies operating closely with the Philippines is an unwelcome development, a direct challenge to its narrative of undisputed regional hegemony. Each joint exercise, each high-level defense meeting, each statement of mutual support chips away at the foundation of fear and division Beijing has sought to cultivate. The Philippines' coalition building has transformed the strategic calculus in the South China Sea, turning a bilateral dispute into a multilateral issue of global concern. While China flexed its military muscles at sea, it simultaneously deployed another powerful weapon against the Philippines: economic coercion. The diplomatic chill after Manila's pivot to the U.S. quickly became a deep economic freeze. In a stark and telling sign of Beijing's displeasure, new Chinese investments in the Philippines plummeted to zero. This was not a gradual decline, but a complete and abrupt halt, a turning off of the financial spigot. While China's foreign investments across Asia saw a remarkable 37% rise in 2023, with a significant portion flowing into Southeast Asia, the Philippines was conspicuously left out in the cold. Not a single new investment or construction project from China was initiated. This economic abandonment directly contradicted promises made just a year earlier. In January 2023, President Marcos Jr. undertook a state visit to Beijing. The presidential palace announced that Marcos had secured $22.8 billion in investment pledges. Those pledges spanned sectors from infrastructure, agriculture. They were meant to signal a new era of pragmatic economic cooperation. However, these promises evaporated almost as quickly as they were made. They proved to be little more than political theater designed to lure Manila away from its Western allies. The stark reality of zero new investment exposed the transactional and conditional nature of Beijing's economic diplomacy. The dramatic reversal provided ample ammunition for domestic critics. The camp of former President Rodrigo Duterte was quick to point fingers. A former spokesman for Duterte publicly blamed the pro-American shift for the precipitous drop in Chinese investments. The narrative framed the issue as a simple trade-off: American security guarantees versus Chinese economic prosperity. That created a challenging domestic political dynamic for President Marcos Jr. Ultimately, China's decision to halt investment serves as a cautionary tale for the entire region. It reveals that Beijing is more than willing to use its economic leverage as a tool of statecraft, rewarding compliance, punishing defiance. For the Philippines, this experience has been a harsh but valuable lesson in the perils of over-reliance on a single economic partner. The broken pledges and the subsequent economic freeze-out have likely hardened Manila's resolve, reinforcing the wisdom of diversifying its security alliances and economic partnerships. China's attempt to use economic pressure may have backfired, pushing the Philippines to seek more reliable and transparent investment from Japan, South Korea, Europe, and the United States. This shift may further weaken Beijing's long-term influence. The election of Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. in May 2022 heralded one of the most rapid and significant foreign policy reversals in recent Philippine history. In a stunning pivot away from the preceding 6 years, Marcos decisively placed the Philippines-United States alliance front and center. The pace, the scope, the sheer magnitude have surprised seasoned regional observers. Duterte was known for fiery anti-US rhetoric and a much-publicized pivot to China. Marcos pursued a deliberate, systematic reinvigoration of the century-old treaty alliance. Increased tempo of high-level diplomatic interactions, cabinet-level meetings, extensive military engagements breathed new life into the partnership. This realignment was driven by a pragmatic assessment of national interests against an increasingly aggressive China. Constant harassment of Filipino fishermen, swarming Chinese maritime militia in the Philippine EZ. Beijing's dismissal of the 2016 arbitral ruling showed Duterte's accommodation had failed. Marcos saw appeasement had emboldened China, and that a robust security framework was essential. Returning to its longest-standing ally, the Philippines sought strategic equilibrium and leveraged the U.S. alliance as a bulwark. Tangible results are visible. Revived military cooperation under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, expanded access, U.S. forces to additional strategic Philippine sites, complemented by the largest-ever Balikatan exercises, live-fire drills and joint South China Sea patrols. These moves enhance interoperability and signal mutual defense commitment. For the U.S., a revitalized Philippine alliance is a cornerstone of Indo-Pacific strategy, providing a critical strategic foothold. The Marcos pivot marks a return to a more traditional, arguably more stable foreign policy. It acknowledges the enduring value of the U.S. security umbrella. It's not simply Washington over Beijing, it's Philippine agency and a clear-eyed national security policy. Anchoring strategy in the U.S. alliance has altered geopolitical dynamics, reassured traditional partners, and signaled to Beijing the Philippines will not be a passive bystander. The warmth has returned to a relationship that had grown cold, bringing a renewed shared purpose. While President Marcos Jr. steers the Philippine ship of state firmly toward the United States, a powerful political current is pulling in the opposite direction, threatening to change the country's course once again. This current is embodied by Vice President Sara Duterte, the daughter of the former president, the current frontrunner for the 2028 presidential election. Should she decide to run, a near certainty, and maintain her current popularity, she is widely expected to become the next leader of the Philippines. Her potential presidency casts a long shadow of uncertainty over the nation's foreign policy, particularly its stance on the delicate balancing act between Washington and Beijing. Vice President Duterte has not been shy in her criticism of what she perceives as the Marcos administration's overly pro-American alignment. She has argued that Manila has prioritized its security alliance with the United States at the expense of its crucial relationship with China, echoing the core tenets of her father's foreign policy. She advocates for a more independent path, one that avoids taking sides in the great power rivalry. She has publicly stated her belief that the Philippines should not become a pawn or a middle power in the game of supremacy and domination between the two global giants. This perspective suggests a future administration under her leadership might seek to dial back the intense security cooperation with Washington, in favor of reopening diplomatic and economic channels with Beijing. A victory for Sara Duterte in 2028 could therefore trigger another dramatic foreign policy pivot, undoing much of the groundwork laid by President Marcos Jr. A return to a more China-friendly posture could see a reduction in the scope and frequency of joint military exercises with the United States and with its allies. It might also lead to a reevaluation of the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, potentially restricting U.S. access to the strategic bases that are so crucial to Washington's regional strategy. Such a shift would undoubtedly be welcomed by Beijing, which would see an opportunity to regain influence in Manila, repair the diplomatic damage, and potentially drive a wedge between the Philippines and its treaty ally. However, the path back to a pro-China policy would be fraught with challenges, even for a President Sara Duterte. The Philippine military, the defense establishment, and a significant portion of the public have grown increasingly wary of Beijing's intentions. The political landscape in 2028 will be shaped by the successes or failures of the current pro-US policy. The year 2025 marks a complicated milestone, the 50th anniversary of formal ties between the Philippines and China. Instead of celebration, it's been overshadowed by mounting tensions. Strategic mistrust now dominates the relationship. The Philippines has become a sobering case study for Southeast Asia, 5 decades of complex dealings with Beijing. Once optimistic pronouncements of friendship and cooperation transformed into an asymmetrical relationship. From Manila's view, China is a major strategic concern. Beijing often treats the Philippines as subordinate. China's sweeping 9-line claim encroaches on the Philippines' EZ. The Philippines won a landmark 2016 ruling at The Hague. China flatly rejected the decision and increased aggressive activities. That has made international law feel undermined. Over 50 years, the relationship cycled through multiple phases: cautious engagement, economic partnership, open hostility. The conflict between China and the Philippines is no longer confined to the high seas. It's spilled over into the cultural and information domains. A prime example emerged in July 2025, when China launched a concerted campaign to suppress a Filipino documentary titled Food Delivery, Fresh from the West Philippine Sea. The film highlighted the immense challenges faced by Filipino fishermen and the Philippine Coast Guard as they contend with constant Chinese interference. It offered a powerful, ground-level perspective on the human cost of Beijing's maritime expansionism. The initial attempts at censorship were shrouded in mystery. The documentary was reportedly withdrawn from its planned premiere due to pressure from external forces. Undeterred, the filmmakers secured a new debut at the prestigious Dock Edge Festival in Auckland, New Zealand. The Chinese embassy in New Zealand and its consulate in Auckland directly contacted the festival organizers, demanding immediate cancellation. Chinese officials deployed their standard diplomatic playbook, labeling the documentary a gross distortion of facts, and dismissing it as a mere tool of Philippine propaganda. This heavy-handed approach was a telling admission of weakness. Rather than engaging with the content, Beijing resorted to brute force censorship, attempting to bully an independent arts festival. This tactic spectacularly backfired, generating significant international media coverage, and drawing even more attention to the documentary and the very issues China sought to obscure. It was a classic example of the Streisand effect, where an attempt to hide information only makes it more widespread. This episode reveals the deep insecurity at the heart of China's foreign policy. Beijing seeks to control the narrative by silencing dissenting voices, whether they come from fishermen, journalists, or filmmakers. China's effort was not just an attack on a single film, it was an assault on freedom of expression, and an attempt to erase the lived experiences of Filipinos who are on the front lines of this dispute. The incident underscores the critical importance of a free press and independent arts in holding powerful nations accountable, and ensuring that the stories of the vulnerable are not lost in the shadow of great power politics. The strategic partnership between the Philippines and the United States has moved beyond joint patrols and exercises into a new, more potent phase of defensive posturing, in a move that has sent shockwaves through the region. The United States deployed its advanced Typhoon missile system to the northern Philippines in April 2024. This ground-based launcher is capable of firing Tomahawk cruise missiles, SM-6 multi-role projectiles, can strike targets at sea, can strike targets on land, from hundreds of miles away. The deployment of such a powerful offensive and defensive weapon on Philippine soil represents one of the most significant military developments in decades. It drew swift and sharp condemnation from China and from Russia. One launcher, the NMESIS, Navy Marine Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System, was positioned in Batanes, just over 100 miles from Taiwan. Beijing sees this proximity as deeply provocative. A senior Philippine official said the system would deter Chinese aggression and give them sleepless nights. Initially, the system was to remain temporarily until September 2024 as part of joint exercises. Manila has announced plans to extend the stay, signaling a long-term defense commitment. This reflects a hardening resolve in the Philippine defense establishment. The Typhoon presence changes the security dynamic, enabling the U.S. and Philippines to put Chinese naval assets at risk. For China, this is a strategic nightmare. A tangible first island chain strategy, land-based missiles controlling choke points. The deployment complicates any Chinese invasion of Taiwan and raises the stakes for regional confrontation. China protests diplomatically, conducts military drills, but risks direct conflict if it attacks the sites. The series of events paint a clear picture. China is rapidly losing its influence in the Philippines. What was once a promising relationship, courted with billions in investment pledges and diplomatic overtures, has soured into open hostility. Beijing's strategy, a combination of economic inducement and military intimidation, has backfired spectacularly. Its aggressive actions at sea, epitomized by the clumsy and embarrassing collision of its own ships, have not cowed Manila into submission but have instead galvanized a firm response, pushing the Philippines decisively back into the strategic orbit of the United States. The evidence of this strategic failure is overwhelming. On the security front, the Philippines has forged a broader coalition including Australia, Japan, and Canada. The deployment of advanced U.S. missile systems represents a monumental shift, creating a powerful deterrent. Beijing's decision to freeze investments has stripped it of its primary tool of soft power. Beijing has fundamentally misread the Philippine national character, underestimating its resilience and commitment to sovereignty. China's loss in the Philippines serves as a powerful lesson. Influence cannot be sustained through intimidation alone. Lasting partnerships are built on mutual respect and international law, principles Beijing seems to have forgotten.